in the United States from 1980 to 1985 and in the legal department of the World Bank as a legal counsel from 1986 to 2007. She's a Yale Law School graduate. In 1999, Karen reported on the corrupt takeover of the Philippines National Bank, earning herself a reprimand and eventually the sack. She's been exposed to integrity and due process failures of major institutions such as the US General Accountability Office, or GAO, in examining her claims against the World Bank. Karen went on to establish a number of oversight committees under the auspices of the American Bar Association and the US branch of the International Law Association. She's teamed up with other whistleblowers to compare notes on such issues as insider trading and inaccurate financial reporting. Because of her wide-ranging contacts, Karen has much to divulge about what's going on behind the scenes with elite factions, hidden power structures and global puppet masters. Today she'll be spilling the beans on what she's learned on the global currency wars, the real power behind the Vatican, what's happened to those missing stashes of gold, is there a secret parallel humanoid race, and the agenda to control or enslave humanity or not. Her intention is to expose the corruption which dominates our world and to make sure that we wise up to it. Please give her a big warm Nexus Conference welcome, Karen Hooties.
Thank you very much, Duncan. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. There have been so many years that as a whistleblower, you try to find your audience and you're chasing them. And here you are. So it's a real celebration and it's a privilege. And I have to tell you that I've been on a very steep learning curve, but it's gotten very steep today too, Duncan. Thank you so much for this Nexus conference. I just wanted to start out, first of all, by saying that you see my website URL. There's a contact page. And if you have any questions, please ask them. And I deal in documentation. If there's something that I say and I can't back it up, and it turns out that it's wrong, I'll retract it because my intention is to get to the bottom of whatever it is that's keeping us in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I can tell you, one of the criticisms that I take the deepest to heart is that I'm leading people into a false sense of security, that humanity is about to be wiped off the face of the earth, and I'm telling everybody that it's exactly the opposite. We're about to come into our inheritance. So let's go to the first slide. That's your gold. It's 1,750,000 metric tons. Where is it? First of all, it's in a special trust account that was set up by Ferdinand Marcos. He was doing this as a young lawyer for Jose Rizal, who had been in the Vatican for many years. Jose Rizal was the son of Prince Tolano, who was a twin of Queen Victoria. And the royals have kept the world's gold for themselves, and then it was stolen from them by the banks. And what happened is Prince Jose Rizal didn't like what he saw at the Vatican, and so he came back to the Philippines with the Vatican's gold. The Vatican sent the gold to the Philippines for safekeeping. And what Jose Rizal did was he locked that gold up in a trust account for 50 years. And the thing about a trust account for 50 years is if you say you own something and you haven't managed to get control of it, after 50 years, you've lost it under something called the statute of limitations. So that gold went into hiding for 50 years, and those 50 years ended in 2005. But we didn't manage to get our gold out. And the reason why is because the banks refused. The man who's the authorized signature authority, and you'll see a little clip of him, that's Wolfgang Struck, he kept writing to the banks and saying, I have the right to withdraw the money. I have the right to find out how much money it is now because it's been accruing interest. And the banks wouldn't give him the time of day. And when I started flailing around, which is what I actually did for a number of years after I was fired by the World Bank, he found me. He said, the two of us can get the job done, and that's exactly what we're doing. And who are we teaming up with? We're teaming up with all the countries of the world, the BRICS countries. And one of the people that's helping us is Putin. I've been on Russia television today 3 times. Yeah? So you're starting to get the picture, right? And, you know, Germany just announced that it was going to the BRICS. You know, the day that they announced that, that was the day that I wrote a press release for a 24-hour embargo. And during that 24-hour period, that is when Germany said that they were going to join the BRICS. So what you actually have is you have all of the countries of the world that are all on the same page.
The World Bank and its sister organization, the International Monetary Fund, are very special organizations. They are sitting on top of the world's wealth, which was put into a secret account, and it has more gold than anybody knows about. And it is cloaked in secrecy. The bankers do not own that money. It's held in benefit for humanity. The World Bank and the IMF are listed on a special agreement that was signed in 1950 about that. Assets, it's gold. It's more gold than people know about. It's over 1 million metric tons of gold. And the World Bank and the IMF have a special role to play, making sure that that money is spent to the benefit of humanity.
So where's the gold? A lot of people, some people believe that the gold in Fort Knox has disappeared. That's been in question for many years. Congressmen have attempted to get an audit of the gold in Fort Knox. So 1 million metric tons of gold is not something you can just hide. Where would you say that that gold is being stored?
400,000 metric tons are in the Central Bank of the Philippines. There's over 200,000 metric tons in Union Bank of Switzerland. And some of that gold is buried securely in the Philippines as well. Some of it is held in various banks, but the bulk of it is in the Philippines.
So the World Bank holds the note on that gold?
No. It is in a special trust account that was set up by Ferdinand Marcos, and the authorized signatory is a German banker lawyer by the name of Wolfgang Struck, who also lives in the Philippines.
So how do the people get the gold back? If it's their gold and it was taken by these bankers, how do we receive it?
That is the question. And they're just sitting there illegally and refusing to relinquish it. Part of the problem is that this gold is cloaked in secrecy. But in the last month, Wolfgang Struck has been publishing all of the documentation. So it's there for people to see. We have the originals. And people just have to make sure that the banks do what they're required to do, which is release the world's wealth.
Yeah. What shall we do?
I would like to introduce you, Wolfgang, to everybody. This is Wolfgang Struck, and we are going to do this brief video because I think it's about time everybody met the eminent Wolfgang Struck, who, yes,
Oh my God.
eminent.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll just give a very brief introduction how we got in touch with each other. And I thought maybe if I just read the email that I got from you, which was dated May 8th, 2013. Dear Karen Hudis, a friend spoon-fed me with the World Bank whistleblower. This is very interesting indeed, even if, to be honest with you, some of the things were a little technical. I do see a person in front of me who has prior insight. And this is the important part. I'm in a position to legally claim ownership to the unlawfully sequestered shares of stock of the late Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos, and you know what follows. It ends with the umbrella code 010-2274-OA. This looks to me like the best matchup. Let's do something great together.
Okay.
So I hand it over to you, Wolfgang.
And to say what? Yes, I have been on this, let's say, latest from 2002, when I came into a position of being the authorized representative for the court-appointed owner of the Philippines. At that time, I thought that he was the owner of the Philippines. I got corrected later on. This is Prince Julian Morden-Tallano, who was convinced by friends of mine that maybe Wolfgang, as a German lawyer and a former banker with UBS, could bring something moving. And I had a very big problem together with the presiding judge in the Tallano case. He said, Wolfgang, you have good ideas, but where is it? Where is the gold? Where are the accounts? And I did not know. Until I found in 2009, more or less by chance, by accident, I found someone his name is Floro Garcia. And I had no idea that would be the key to the whole thing. I have no idea. I met a person, no read, no write. He had, I don't know what, he had two old or very old advisors, all of this. And I said, oh my God, what is all of this? But with my little advantage that I have, I come from UBS practically. I know what Marcos was about, more or less. I did for some time, I did some trading for UBS in my own office in number 2 Broadway in Manhattan, New York. When they told me at night what to do, I had a huge advantage. So I got married to a Filipina, come to the Philippines, and then I fall into this trap that everybody is trapping in, that everything is now a lie about Marcos. And they claim that Marcos was a dictator, that Marcos had stolen money from the Filipino people, and nobody dares to speak out. I was with a lawyer who is claimed to be a Marcos lawyer, Oliver Lozano, and I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot. I learned a lot also from other people. This is so complex, nobody can understand. I can only say one thing. My sons asked me, Papa, what are you doing in the Philippines? And I said, I better don't tell you because you will think that your father is crazy. I'm not. I'm just a boy from here in northern Germany, and I had 16 years, very nice years in Düsseldorf, in Germany, when I was officially appointed to be the broker in the Düsseldorf Stock Exchange for currency in the office of Heinz Bierbaum.
Contact Phoenix Journal Review. Independent confirmation of the Philippines gold.
Throughout the Spanish occupation of the Maharlika, members of the Tagay and Galiano clan have been visiting Europe since some of their relatives were English and Austrian. From 1866 to 1898, Prince Julian Macleod Galiano, who became title holder of OCT 01-4 in 1864, had also been frequenting the Vatican. In 1934, under Pope Pius XII, the Vatican negotiated with a member of the Filipino royal family, the Christian Tallano clan in the Maharlika. An agreement was reached that 640,000 metric tons of the Tallano gold would be lent to the Pope. This was part of that gold accumulated by the Southeast Asian Srivijaya and Majapahit Empire during its glorious reign of 900 years. In 1939, two members of the Italiano family and a Roman Catholic priest, Father Jose Antonio Diaz, brought the gold from Cota Kinabalu, Saba, to the Vatican. After doing this, Father Diaz went back to the Maharlika and resided in Cabanatuan City. After World War II, he facilitated the safe return of the 640,000 metric tons of gold from the Vatican to the Maharlika. Manuela Cunha Rojas, a relative of the Acuña-Taguig and Italiano clan, then a congressman, and Bishop Enrique Sobrepena Sr., in the presence of attorney Lorenzo Cañada, received the gold in Manila. Having gained the trust and confidence of Father Diaz, the Italiano clan made him the main negotiator and trustee of their gold. Father Diaz, in turn, hired the services of attorney Ferdinand Marcos, then a highly recommended brilliant young lawyer, having attained notoriety when he successfully defended himself in the Malunda Saan case in 1939. The Italiano clan paid commission to Father Diaz and attorney Marcos in gold, 30% from the principal of 640,000 metric tons. In 1949, the two richest men in the world were Father Jose Antonio Diaz and attorney Ferdinand Marcos. Between the two of them, they legitimately earned and owned 192,000 metric tons of gold. Ferdinand Marcos withdrew their share of the gold from the central bank and minted it, RPCB. Sometime later, Father Diaz and Marcos brought their gold to Switzerland, in the Swiss Bank Corporation in Zurich. The remaining 400,000 metric tons of Italiano gold is in the third-floor basement of the central bank minting plant in East Avenue, Quezon City. Gold for gold, dollar for dollar, this country, the Maharlika, is the richest country in the world. During a talk show in our U.S. TV the week following the bombing of the New York Twin Towers, President Bush was asked this question: which is the richest country in the world today? With a smile he said, the Philippines.
On April 9, 1973, Marcos said, "My earthly goods have been placed in the custody and for the disposition of the Marcos Foundation, dedicated to the welfare of the Filipino people."
This year. And so I sent him this press release, and it said that the county executives of America do not want the Federal Reserve note to crash and disarm the United States. So the county executives of America agree that the United States is going to accept this gold that you see up there. That gold is what John F. Kennedy was using when he was going to print Treasury dollars. And 10 days later, he was murdered. So we are going to do what John F. Kennedy was planning on doing. And you want to hear something really sweet? Carolyn Kennedy is the ambassador of the United States in Tokyo. So that's where we are. But it's not going to happen automatically. Everybody has got to be informed. And they're certainly not going to be informed by the newspapers or the television stations. Nobody on the television station is hearing about me. Nobody who reads their newspapers is hearing about me. And 2/3 of the alternative media is there to try to discredit me. Because they, for example, Reddit, Adam Schwartz is the one who started Reddit. Condé Nast bought up Reddit after Adam was suicided. And what did Reddit do in reporting some of the issues I'm reporting on? They had one article which was very confusing. When I went in there to try to correct the confusion, I was embargoed. So the alternative media is not going to give you the automatic news either. You've got to be discerning. And I'm sure if you're here in this conference, you probably are discerning. So it's been a wonderful welcome. It's a great privilege to be here.
former lead counsel for the World Bank. She turned whistleblower, attorney Karen Hudez.
Karen Hudez, can you give the audience a little background on yourself?
Yes, I'm a lawyer and an economist, and I worked in the legal department of the World Bank for 20 years. I did what a lawyer inside a bank is supposed to do, which is when the financial information was getting fiddled, I reported it up the corporate ladder. I went to the audit committee. When that didn't work, I went to the U.S. Treasury Department. When that didn't work, I went to the U.S. Congress. When that didn't work, I went to Ben Bernanke. When that didn't work, I went to the rest of the world.
I know that name. I've heard that name.
Yeah, and when that didn't work, I went to the rest of the world. And that's where we are now. We're with the rest of the world.
That there is a special trust that contains just about all of the world's gold. It was established by Ferdinand Marcos. This gold, people want to know what the gold is. It's
You're referring to the president of the Philippines, of the former president of the Philippines who died in '89, correct?
That's correct. That's who, except, it's not clear about the exact date of his death because he had a cousin who, he was removed. He was removed by the CIA. It was not by a popular uprising. You know how the CIA stages these things. And he was sent off to Hawaii. But he had expected that this was going to happen, and he had gotten his cousin to stand in for him. So he was it was his cousin that was in Hawaii, captive. Yeah. But anyway, what Ferdinand Marcos did was he took the world's gold. I was explaining what is the world's gold. It's gold from King Solomon. It's gold that the conquistadors in Spain gathered up from the Aztec and Inca civilizations. It is gold that was gathered by General Yamashita between World War I and World War II. And what the banks did when they gathered up the gold, they issued certificates to the wealthy people who had the gold. And those certificates had interest that was payable in gold. And the interest has been compounding. What Ferdinand Marcos did was he put the gold in a trust for benefit of humanity. And he said that the trust would be for 50 years. The reason he did this, he was a lawyer, and he knew that if somebody claims that they own something and they are not able to prove their claim for 50 years, that claim is extinguished. That's a legal concept called statute of limitations.
So let's see if I can do my PowerPoint. I stayed up after I saw some of the really good presentations. I realized I had to do better than than what I was originally starting out. The reason I have this picture of the switchboard operator, that's actually what my function is. I'm a lawyer, I'm an economist, but more than anything else, I'm a switchboard operator. And I'm sitting right in the heart of the international financial system. That's what the World Bank and the IMF are. And a lot of people are very angry at those institutions because those institutions were taken over by the banking cartel and they were hijacked. But the actual documents about the articles and the rules for that organization, it's actually intact. And that's how we are taking back our wealth. The World Bank and the IMF were set up in 1944 by none other than Jose Rizal, the guy who had Ferdinand Marcos put that gold in trust. Because what Jose Rizal had in mind was that we, in the citizens of the world, were going to need an institution to reclaim our wealth, to reclaim our gold. And that was what he set up there. And what happened was 6 months after the World Bank was set up, there was a rule that said, and by the way, there's 2 layers of oversight. You've got a resident board, which consists of the countries, and it's not one country, one vote. Right now there's 25 executive directors. In the beginning there were 12, and the 8 countries with the largest economies get their own dedicated executive director, and then the rest are grouped into constituencies, and they reside there. What happened 6 months after the World Bank was set up was they had a secret rule, a memorandum that said the board was only going to vote up or down what the president proposed. And the president, of course, is the lackey of the banking cartel. So that's how they hijacked the World Bank. But the lawyer who had been there when they negotiated the Articles of Agreement, Aaron Brockus, the longest-serving general counsel, I got to know him before I joined the World Bank, but I knew that I wanted to go there. And one of the things about me is I'm incredibly persistent. I'm off the charts persistent. And so if I decided I was going to go to work at the World Bank, I was going to go and work at the World Bank. And that's what I did. And so I learned from Aaron Brockus about what the function of the General Counsel was in the World Bank. They're supposed to sit there between the presidency and the board and mediate. They're there for rule of law in the international financial system. And he told me when Robert McNamara came to the World Bank as the World Bank's president, that's when the place started really going bad. So I knew when Paul Wolfowitz came to the World Bank that we were in for some heavy sledding. But I had been by that time I had been at the World Bank for 10 years. The man who brought me into the World Bank, Ibrahim Shihada, he was the general counsel of OPEC. And I guess he must have understood that I was not, the World Bank is, it's got all the countries of the world, and it's a big bureaucracy. But I have been teaming up with the whistleblowers inside the World Bank. So there's the way it works at the World Bank, you have 5% of the people there, they were actually hired by mistake, because they try to find people who are going to go with the flow and just be there for their bureaucracy. But every now and then, there'll be people who are there for the actual mission of the organization. And I think Ibrahim Shihada thought that I was going to be doing that. And that's exactly why he brought me in there, and that's exactly what I've been doing. And it's been a great privilege. But so I've been teaming up with the other whistleblowers at the World Bank, and it is a dream team. I would be sitting at home, and one of them would call me up and say, Karen, there's a hearing in Congress. I would jump in the car, I would go there. And so, for example, Timothy Geithner was at one of those hearings. One of the things that happened in the U.S. Congress was some of them would actually do their job. Yeah, Senator Richard Lugar was one of the ones who did their job. When I reported to Senator Lugar, that there was all this corruption inside the World Bank, Senator Lugar wrote 3 letters to the World Bank saying, don't fire this lady. They fired me anyway. But, by the way, one of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, it was chaired by Joe Biden. It had 2 junior senators on there, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And I have been, if you want to find out what's been going on, you can just go on my website and you can see the letters that I've been writing to these people. I have been nagging them. I have been tagging them. I have been, they are absolutely, there's nowhere for them to hide. And that's where we are now. And Putin knows this. And he knows that this has been documented in front of the American citizens. And he knows that the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, together with the citizens of the United States who rule of law, because that trust account that I was telling you about, there are certificates, gold certificates. The banks issued the gold certificates to gather up some of the gold in the 30s. And those certificates carry interest payable in gold. And that interest has been compounding. So the banks owe us in the quadrillions. And they are insolvent, and they're going to be declared bankrupt. That's the way, that's the law. However, the governments are not going to rush and do this, because as far as they're concerned, that banking cartel is all powerful. And so they're not going to stick their necks out. So you, citizens, have got to ask them why they are not declaring that banking cartel bankrupt. Why are you paying your tax dollars out of the country to that banking cartel? And be very, very persistent about those questions. I just read from Julian Assange that there's a lawsuit that the court is refusing to tell anybody about. They say it's not in the national security interest. You just can't let them get away with that. You have to tell them that they have to tell you what's going on. You have to tell them that they have to accept your gold. You have to tell them that you're not going to pay tax dollars to a banking cartel that has no right to be charging you interest on your currency, that you just won't stand for that anymore. Now, anyway, this slide that you're looking at was an email that I sent to my senator, Senator Barbara Mikulski. I have been sending her a lot of questions. And this particular question, if you want to see what was attached to it, you just have to go to Twitter, @KarenHudis. And you can see what was attached to that. There was a fellow who was telling me that if I didn't sit in front of the screens of the banks, that they were going to sue me. So I just sent his threat to my senator, who happens to be the chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. And I said, does this guy work for the intelligence community? Because I don't think he's doing the right thing. My job, I didn't know this at the time, but I found this out a little bit later. My job is to certify who is the signature authority for the trust account for the world's gold. And this guy that was threatening me wanted me to certify that a crook was allowed. You know, when you go into a bank and you've got a safe deposit box and one person turns the key and the bank turns the other key. I'm the person that certifies that the one who's turning the key is the real one to turn the key. That's a sweet place to be. And that's where I'm at. Okay, this is, I don't know if you can see the fine print, so I'll just read this out. This is what I said to Senator Mikulski. I'm resending with the correct attachment. That's because whenever I send out emails, I have to go back and reread them because the attachments aren't included, the text isn't included. They're hacking all over the place. But on the other hand, what I find on my computer is sometimes people are giving me documents that I forgot that they existed, but they're actually quite useful. I find that I'm, in the picture of me sitting at the switchboard, all of the intelligence agencies of the world, the good ones, are feeding me information that's useful. And then some of the bad ones are hacking into my email, so I just have to monitor them. Anyway, I copied all of the World Bank executive directors. That means that that's all the countries of the world. That's a cooperative. So we can take back the rule of law. We can take back justice on this planet to the best of our abilities. That's what we have going now. Okay, there was a fellow in one of the Nordic countries in Parliament. He's not really, I thought he was going to help, but it turns out it's a little too much for him. So he said, please take me off your distribution list. That gold belongs to humanity, and it's not going anywhere but to humanity. That's where we are. It's not a bad place to be, actually. Yeah. I'm just reading, by the way, when I issued this press release in embargo, that was the day that Germany announced that they were going to be going to the BRICS. I had also copied the ambassador of Germany to the United States. And I actually had an interview with a magazine that has 1.5 million business readers per month. And at the end of the interview, I said, is there something I left out? This was back in September. And they said, yes, could you speak to the fact that a military helicopter buzzed the Frankfurt consulate, broke all the Chinaware in the U.S. consulate? Okay, now this is just one of the certificates. This is how we're going to put the banking cartel in bankruptcy. I don't think you can see the year 1934. Maybe you can. It's the next to the last line. This 17th day of August, 1934. So that's been accruing interest. That's ours. That's on our behalf.